Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
What if I told you there was a time when a goalkeeper was judged by one thing only: the ability to keep the ball out of the net? Clean sheets, command of the box, reflexes, these were the metrics that separated good from great. But football has changed. Systems have evolved, and so too have the expectations placed on the last line of defence. Today, the ideal goalkeeper is no longer just a shot stopper. They are a playmaker, a passer, a press-resistant technician in gloves. At the heart of this evolution stands Andre Onana, perhaps the clearest example of what happens when a goalkeeper becomes more valuable for how he starts attacks than how he ends them. After impressing with Ajax and guiding Inter Milan to a Champions League final, Onana earned a move to Manchester United, one of the most scrutinised clubs in world football. The narrative was clear. United were modernising, finally bringing in a goalkeeper who could help build from the back, orchestrate under pressure, and offer a new level of composure in defence. But as the season unfolded, another story began to emerge. Despite the promise and pedigree, Onana found himself at the centre of repeated defensive collapses. Goals that once looked savable slipped through. Confidence waned. Moments of brilliance with the ball at his feet began to feel irrelevant when they were followed by mistakes in front of goal. And so, a contradiction takes shape. How can a goalkeeper be elite in all the modern metrics and still feel like a liability in the most fundamental part of his job? This contradiction is what we call the Andre Onana Theorem. The idea that a goalkeeper today can be selected, celebrated and transferred for his technical ability with the ball, even if his actual goalkeeping suffers as a result. This isn't just about Onana. It's about how clubs assess talent, how tactics distort priorities, and how football may be losing sight of the basics in its quest for progress. As more teams adopt high lines, possession models, and risk-heavy build-up play, the goalkeeper has become something else entirely. And maybe, in doing so, we've forgotten why he was there in the first place. This is the story of the theorem, and the goalkeeper who proved it. So let's start from scratch. Once hailed as a revolutionary, Andre Onana now stands as the clearest example of how modern football has broken the idea of what a goalkeeper should be. He came through the Ajax system, the perfect laboratory for the modern goalkeeper. There, he wasn't just asked to save shots. He was tasked with starting attacks, breaking lines, and playing like an outfield player in disguise. And he excelled. Calm under pressure, brave with the ball, comfortable receiving passes in tight spaces. He fit the idea of the new goalkeeper so well that the goalkeeping part almost felt like a secondary trait. At Inter Milan, he took that reputation to a higher level. In the Champions League, his distribution was a genuine tactical weapon. He helped Inter bypass pressing traps and set the rhythm of play. They reached the final, not just despite him, but partly because of him. So, when Manchester United came calling, the move felt like the natural next step. Erik ten Hag knew him, trusted him, and more importantly, believed that building from the back couldn't work without a goalkeeper like Onana. But in the Premier League, things unravelled quickly. The same goalkeeper, praised for his calmness, began flapping at routine saves. Mistakes piled up, poor positioning, lapses in focus, unforced errors. His Champions League campaign with United became defined not by bold passes, but by high-profile goals conceded. The irony? He was brought in to modernise the club. Instead, he exposed just how brittle the modern template could be. Because here's the truth. Onana isn't a bad goalkeeper. He's just a symbol of misplaced priorities. A goalkeeper who represents a trend where passing is valued over saving. Where coaches want press resistance more than penalty box dominance. Where a great ball-playing keeper can earn a big transfer, even if their actual goalkeeping isn't elite. And then, there's the Manchester United factor. This isn't just a club. At United, the margin for error is microscopic. The lights are brighter, the noise is louder, and the pressure isn't just to perform, it's to be nearly perfect every game immediately. Many talented players, not just Onana, have been eaten up by the expectation. It's not enough to be part of a rebuild. You have to survive the spotlight while under construction. That's why the Onana Theorem matters. Not because he's the first ball-playing goalkeeper to struggle, but because he represents a wider confusion in football right now. When a goalkeeper's job description changes too much, when saving goals becomes secondary to creating them, the very purpose of the position is at risk. Andre Onana isn't broken, but maybe the idea of modern goalkeeping is. And if you're looking for the moment it all tipped over, it might just be the day Manchester United signed him. Kepa Arrizabalaga is not just an example of the modern goalkeeper gone wrong. He's arguably the first fully formed case study of how this entire model can collapse. He was signed for his feet, judged for his hands, and remembered for his mistakes. When Chelsea spent a world record £71 million on him in 2018, it wasn't because he was the best shot stopper in the world. It was because he fit the new mould. Young, composed, technically clean with the ball, comfortable under pressure. Kepa had all the traits clubs had begun to value more than reflexes, dominance, or command of the area. He looked like a modern goalkeeper, but that's exactly the problem. Clubs started buying profiles, not goalkeepers. At Athletic Club, he showed glimpses of sharp distribution and courage in possession, but his core shot-stopping numbers were never elite. Chelsea still gambled, and the gamble was philosophical. Maurizio Sarri wanted to play out from the back. The goalkeeper had to be involved, not just as a safety net, but as a first line of progression. Kepa was supposed to be a system fit, a long-term tactical solution. Instead, like Onana, he became a liability. In his first full season, Kepa posted one of the worst save percentages in the Premier League. Routine shots went in, his positioning was often suspect, his presence in the box never developed. Even his distribution, the supposed strength, began to wobble under pressure. He wasn't just making mistakes, he was inviting them. Opponents started shooting on sight, knowing there was a chance he might spill, flap, or dive too late. And yet, the narrative around him remained stubbornly optimistic for far too young. He's young. He fits the modern game. He just needs confidence. But the truth was simpler. Kepa wasn't keeping the ball out of the net. And for a goalkeeper, that's the one job that can't be outsourced or excused. The infamous Carabao Cup final moment, where he refused to be subbed off for a penalty shootout, was symbolic. It wasn't just about disobedience, it was about perception. The idea of a goalkeeper who believed he was indispensable, despite not performing like one. That moment crystallized how far removed the position had become from its core purpose. Loan moves followed. At Real Madrid, he was supposed to quietly rebuild. But again, he was benched. This time by Lunin, a more traditional reactive keeper. The pattern repeated itself. The ball-playing ability never quite compensated for the absence of presence, reliability, or trust. Kepa fits the Onana Theorem because he highlights the same blind spot. football's obsession with aesthetics at the expense of execution. He was signed for what he could look like in a system, not what he could save in a match. And in the end, like Onana, the illusion collapsed when the spotlight grew brighter. Kepa wasn't a failed goalkeeper. He was a modern one, and that might be the problem. Claudio Bravo wasn't just a goalkeeper. He was Pep Guardiola's dream made flesh. A short, sharp passing, high line sweeping, footwork fetishist in gloves. When Man City signed him in 2016, it was clear. They didn't want a shot stopper. They wanted a deep-lying playmaker who happened to be allowed to use his hands. Bravo fit the mould. A La Liga veteran with Barcelona on his CV, he was trusted to turn City's chaotic backline into a controlled metronome. Pep's philosophy demands total control, and to him, that starts at the back. Joe Hart, despite being England's #1 and wildly popular, couldn't play the ball with both feet. So out he went, and in came Bravo, the prototype of the modern keeper. And then chaos. Within weeks of arriving, Bravo's reputation began to unravel faster than a poorly strung net. The moment that summed it all up? October 2016, Camp Nou. A return to his old stomping ground against Barcelona. And what does he do? Receives the ball outside his box, takes the touch, misplaces a pass directly to Luis Suarez, and then, in a moment of cosmic farce, handballs it in desperation. Straight red. Pep staring into space like he'd seen a tactical ghost. That moment became a meme, but more importantly, it became the symbol of a growing issue. Goalkeepers being judged more for their passing diagrams than their save percentages. Bravo's shot stopping at City was abysmal. He ended the 2016-17 season with the worst save percentage in the league, a staggering 55%. That's barely above cardboard cutout levels. And here's why Claudio Bravo fits the Onana Theorem perfectly. He was signed not because of his primary job, keeping the ball out of the net, but because he fit the tactical blueprint. He was the keeper as midfielder, the sweeper in gloves, the system fit. Yet as soon as the system faltered, or opponents pressed high, or shots rained in, Bravo's weaknesses were brutally exposed. He became the face of an era that confused being brave on the ball with being good at goalkeeping. Like Onana, he represents what happens when style is elevated above substance, and where control is valued more than competence. The only difference is that Bravo's decline was so spectacular, it forced a course correction. Pep went from Bravo to Edison, a keeper who could also play like a midfielder, but who at least had the hands to stop the occasional shot. Bravo didn't just test the limits of the modern keeper, he broke the dam and flooded the city. In the end, Bravo became something of a cult figure, a red flag in retrospect. The man who proved that passing out from the back is only useful if you're not passing directly to Lionel Messi. He was never a bad footballer. He just wasn't a very good goalkeeper. And in the end, that kind of still matters. Claudio Bravo was Guardiola's opening experiment. The first domino in a long chain of foot-perfect goal-shy keepers. The smile was calm, the passes were clean. The goals, unfortunately, kept going in. Let me clarify, for my sake. Ilian Meslier is not a bad goalkeeper. Again, he's just a very modern one, and that in itself has become the problem. Thrown into the Leeds United first team at just 20 years old, Meslier was never meant to be the finished product. He was raw, rangy, and technically tidy. But what set him apart, even back then, was how comfortable he was on the ball. Marcelo Bielsa spotted it immediately. This wasn't just a goalkeeper, this was a deep-lying playmaker in gloves. A sweeper, a starter of attacks in a system as aggressive and man-to-man as Bielsa's. The keeper had to be more than safe. He had to be brave. And Meslier was brave, sometimes to a fault. Whether it was playing quick, tight passes through pressure, or stepping out of his box to launch a move, he looked the part. Calm, technical, stylish, but underneath the surface, the cracks were forming. He was making saves, yes, but also making a lot of avoidable mistakes. Parried shots into danger zones, misjudged angles, flapped at crosses, poor positioning, and, crucially, a string of goals that made you wonder whether the basics were ever the priority. But the system gave him protection, or rather, the system needed him. For Leeds to play the way they wanted to, they had to live with the risks. And when the system broke down, as it did in the Premier League, when injuries piled up and the defensive line turned chaotic, Meslier became an easy target. Suddenly, the young prodigy was being blamed for results that had far more complex origins. He became a scapegoat, not because he was the worst player on the pitch, but because his mistakes were the most visible. And more than that, his style invited that visibility. Just like Onana, just like Kepa, just like Bravo. Here's why Meslier fits the Onana Theorem perfectly. He's a goalkeeper, being developed more like a midfielder. In training, you get the sense that distribution drills come before shot-stopping drills, that the focus is on being press-resistant rather than reaction-ready. He can ping 40-yard passes with either foot, but struggles to command his 6-yard box. His decision-making in one-on-ones remains shaky, and his technique when diving still looks loose. But because he's modern, because he fits the idea, he gets the benefit of the doubt. Until he doesn't. Leeds fans know he's young, but youth isn't always a shield. And in a relegation fight, or worse, after relegation, you're not judged on potential. You're judged on results. Meslier has been left exposed by tactics, injuries, and instability. But he's also been encouraged into a style that leaves little margin for error. And he's made plenty of them. He's not a bad goalkeeper. He's just built in the modern image, where ball playing often comes before ball saving. He might grow into a great goalkeeper, but right now, he's another reminder that flair without fundamentals is a dangerous thing in goal. Ilian Meslier, in my opinion, is not the problem. He's the product of one. At the end of the day, the Onana Theorem isn't just about one player. It's a reflection of a trend, a quiet transformation of the goalkeeper position into something it was never meant to be. It's about systems valuing the wrong thing. And it's about the subtle, uncomfortable truth that we may be raising a generation of goalkeepers who are better at looking modern than actually being good. At its core, the theorem is simple. When goalkeepers are signed or developed primarily for their ability on the ball, instead of their ability to keep the ball out of the net, the game suffers, and so do the keepers. I don't want to see any goalkeeper fail. I genuinely don't. It's the loneliest position in football. One mistake and the whole world points fingers. But what I've started to believe is this. In today's game, goalkeepers aren't just being judged unfairly, they're being built incorrectly. When you watch Onana, you see the idea, the composure, the passing range, the swagger. But then you watch the highlights, or rather the lowlights, and you see something else. Mistakes, soft goals, big moments crumbling under pressure. The same with Kepa, with Claudio Bravo, and now with Ilian Meslier. A young keeper thrown into the deep end, asked to play like a midfielder before learning how to truly guard the net. It feels at times like modern goalkeepers are failed outfielders. Players trained in ball retention and composure more than shot stopping, reflexes and decision making. I grew up believing that a goalkeeper needed 5 things above all else: positioning, reflexes, handling, command of the area, and decision making. Distribution came after. Now, distribution often comes first. We're teaching young goalkeepers to be calm under pressure, but not how to come out for a cross with authority. We're coaching them to ping diagonal passes, but not how to read a striker's body language in a one-on-one. And because of that, the role is being stripped of its fundamentals. It's like training a centre-back by starting with how to do Rabonas, rather than how to mark a man. And what's the cost? Slower games, over-cautious build-up, fluidity lost in favour of safety. One misplaced pass, and suddenly the game collapses. A single mistake, a slip, a scuffed clearance, a bad parry, and a simple anthill becomes a mountain. That tension is suffocating. The Onana Theorem isn't an attack on any one keeper. It's a wake-up call. The goalkeeper is not just another outfield player. They are the last line, the difference between winning 1-0 and losing 1-0. And unless we get back to developing them with that in mind, we'll keep seeing talented players thrown into systems breaking under pressure they were never built to handle. It's not about being modern, it's about being good. And those two things, they're not the same. Thank you if you've made it this far. Please, make sure you've subscribed, as there is plenty of football content that I'm planning to create for your leisure, whether it is listening to my lovely voice or to learn something new within the sport. So, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.